KGAB's Wyoming Wake Up with Glenn Woods, named the #1 talk host in his price range.
Try to get someone in my price range to even roll out of bed this time of the morning. It ain't happening. They didn't stick with you for 4 hours. Come on. It's AM 650 KGAB Radio. My name is Glenn Woods. Thanks for joining me. It's a Friday. Glad you made it. Sitting in the studio with me over in, well, I guess I'll start calling the hot seat, is Leland Christensen, who's running for treasurer of the state of Wyoming. I haven't seen you in a while. You've been running around campaigning, I guess.
We've been working the highways, talking to people in towns, counties, communities, events, you name it. Mm-hmm. It's been a good campaign.
And anybody who's running for state office, I always ask them the same thing. So are you at the point now where you need to buy a new set of tires, or do you see that coming real soon?
You kind of start that way.
Yeah.
You know, you start everything geared up, ready to go, fresh rubber, and by the time it's over with, it's a different world.
All right, let's start with a little bit of background for people who don't know where you are. Been in, well, native of Wyoming?
Absolutely.
Okay. Raised where?
Over in Alta, west side of the state, little ag community right on the Idaho state line.
Okay. And then from there, have done what for a living over the years? What's your work history?
You know, I started out, we had an ag family, went to the woods logging because, believe it or not, logging seemed easier than ag in the old days. And we stayed in the logging industry for about 10 years as a kid and then as a young man, family, and ended up getting invited and talked into looking at law enforcement and spent 20 years as a Wyoming lawman on the western side of the state, and then ran for county commissioner, was elected a couple times as a county commissioner, state senator, and then in the middle of all of that, I served in the military.
Okay. And we were talking about that. I have the opportunity to sit in the back of a C-130 Frontier days and dangle my legs off of the tailgate there. You've done that. You've jumped out of a few of those, huh?
Jumped out of a few 130s, 141s, a number of different helicopters. It's been military was a great operation, great experience with solid people.
Okay. Now, how did that lead you? Are you currently living in Cheyenne?
Nope,
Okay.
Living in Alta.
Okay, you're still living way over in Alta. Okay. And same family business there, or what are you doing? Are you doing law enforcement there? What do you
know, I'm retired from law enforcement.
Okay.
We do a little auctioning on the side to help out in the community, little business once in a while.
Okay.
Primarily the last few years, I've spent a lot of time in Cheyenne and around the state as a state legislator.
Okay.
Senator.
What leads you to want to become the state treasurer? There's got to be something that attracts you to that job.
Well, in a nutshell, if you've been following the last few years, we've been relying on our savings account to bridge the gap between our expenditures and our receivables, and we just can't do that forever. And as I look at that, I think our opportunity, rather than hope that our savings doesn't run out, is to do better with our treasury and go for a better return on our investment income, and we have that possibility now. It really started last fall when our current treasurer approached me and asked if I'd be interested in running for treasurer, and then he laid out how you could do that and why we're in a better position based on the constitutional amendment, on some work that the legislature's done, to get a better return on our investments and use our investments to basically bridge that gap. You know, in the past, we've been blessed with a mineral industry that really packed a lot of the weight.
Well, now, a lot of it, and I'll say that over the past few years, we've gotten some pretty good returns on our investment. Do you see a way of maintaining that or getting better return on our investment than we have been?
You know, when the treasurer came over and we had that conversation, and then I went back into the budget session this year, and then Cynthia Lummis, a former state treasurer, she came over one day and said, Leland, this is what we need to do, and this is how it can be better for Wyoming going forward. And so we have been blessed with some good returns on our treasury. We have been very, very conservative. Part of that has been our philosophy. Part of it's been Constitution. But with the change of Amendment A and the time is right to expect and to get a little more performance out of our treasury, I think we've got some real opportunities.
For those who don't know, what is Amendment A?
Amendment A had to do with changing the percentage from bonds to stocks, essentially, giving us a little more latitude to follow the stock market versus just being locked in at bonds. And while bonds are, they kind of keep you flatline, if you look at the history of the markets in America and the world for years, the market continually climbs, and we've taken advantage of some of that increase, but not what we could. There's always a question about risk. Does that put us in a riskier position? But when you break it down and look at the numbers and look at the trends, we can expect and demand a little better performance without unnecessarily risking our assets.
Leland Christensen is my guest. He wants to, he wants your vote for a state treasurer. What? And by the way, your calls are welcome. 632-6500, and I'll even take Facebook messages as well, since we're broadcasting live there. Besides that, besides the investment end of it, what else does the treasurer do?
Well, a big part of that is with the State Land and Investment Board. That's probably the one people are the most familiar with. And, as a county commissioner, I saw the impact of the investment from State Land and Investment Board and their commitment to local communities, infrastructure type things. We have some communities in our state that don't have a lot of resources. They're up against a wall, and they can use some support with some critical infrastructure, whether it has to do with public safety issues, utilities, just basic foundational.
Okay. Does this have anything to do as well with how we tax in the state of Wyoming and where our revenue comes from?
Well, right now, Wyoming is a very friendly state when it comes to our tax law.
Be nice to keep it that way.
And I have no interest in changing that. I think we want to make sure that we stay away from income tax. We don't want to be looking at increased sales taxes. There's talk about user tax, which goes into taxing for services. And I think with an increased investment return, we can really shut that conversation down, and it's very much within reach. We just have to do the job and get those increased returns. If we don't take on this kind of a challenge and get serious about it and go forward, building a strong team and a good relationship between your legislatures, the legislature and the 5 electeds and the public, we could be in a sticky situation in just a few years.
Leland Christensen is my guest. He's running for treasurer in the state of Wyoming. So when we take, look at where our money is now, and I understand a lot of the treasurer office has to do with where the money is and where it's going, but then you also have to advise people. Do you get to vote on anything as well? I just want people to understand exactly what the job is.
Well, right now there's a system in place. We have a treasurer's advisory group that was created by the legislature 2 years ago. And in order to qualify for that and to apply for that, you have to have had experience managing over $500 million for over 7 years, and so a real background. And that sounds high until you realize that Wyoming's treasury is sitting with just over $20 billion. And so we've got a group of people out there that say, we'd like to help. They look at the markets, they look at the trends, they look at our asset allocation, and come back to the treasurer and say, this is some things to be considering. The treasurer then takes that information to the State Land and Investment Board, the other 4 electeds, and then that's how we start to form our decisions going forward on investments and voting together. And there's a fair amount of check and balances in there.
9:18 is the time. It's AM 650 KGAB Radio. More with Leland Christensen in just a moment.
It's summer swap and save time at Spratly Bar Motors in Cheyenne. Looking for a new ride? Then head to the new and used car and truck summer swap at Spratly Bar Motors. The time is right, so swap your old car or truck for a new or used vehicle. The summer selection is hot. If you want it, Spratly Bar in Cheyenne has got it. You drove it long enough, so swap it now. It's summer swap and save time at Spratly Bar, Ford, Lincoln, Toyota, Hyundai in Cheyenne, or at SpratlyBarCheyenne.com.
Hello, this is Emily Hazenauer. I'm your common sense Republican candidate for Laramie County Commissioner. I'm pro-Second Amendment, pro-military, pro-property rights, pro-constitution, pro-life, pro-limited government, pro-mom-and-pop businesses. As County Commissioner, I have signed the No New Tax Pledge. I will promise to make myself available and be a servant to my constituents. I'll be looking for ways to save the taxpayers' money. I'm asking for your vote early or on August 21st. Vote for Emily Hazenauer for Laramie County Commissioner. Together, we can make Laramie County great again. Paid for and approved by Emily Hazenauer.
Have you been on a diet? Did you lose weight only to gain it all back? Are you tired of diet confusion, hormone imbalance, depression, pain, and fatigue? Hi, I'm Roxanne, your health coach. MetaLife is a sustainable weight loss solution offering 12 weeks of health coaching, supplements, and individualized support. It's not a diet and it's not a shake. It's a lifestyle empowerment program and a total body transformation.
Email wyomedalife@gmail.com for more information. That's wyomedalife@gmail.com.
Finding great candidates to hire can be like, well, trying to find a needle in a haystack. Sure, you can post your job to some job board, but then all you can do is hope the right person comes along, which is why you should try ZipRecruiter for free at ziprecruiter.com/free. ZipRecruiter doesn't depend on candidates finding you. It finds them for you. Its powerful technology identifies people with the right experience and actively invites them to apply to your job. So, while other companies might deliver a lot of hay, ZipRecruiter finds you what you're looking for. The needle in the haystack.
80% of employers who post a job on ZipRecruiter get a quality candidate through the site within the first day. It's the smartest way to hire. And right now, you can try ZipRecruiter for free. That's right, free. Just go to this exclusive web address, ziprecruiter.com/free. That's ziprecruiter.com/free. ZipRecruiter.com/free.
This is the KGAB Wyoming Wake Up with Glenn Woods on AM 650 KGAB, where Cheyenne comes to talk.
It's AM 650 KGAB Radio. My name is Glenn Woods. Thanks for joining me. My guest, Leland Christensen. He's running for state treasurer in the state of Wyoming, and you can ask questions if you have any. 632-6500 or outside Wyoming, 888-503-6500. But only outside Wyoming if you're from Wyoming, because there are people who are out of the state, but they still listen to the radio show here. All right, so one of the things we have to go through is we still have a bit of a problem in the state of Wyoming with funding our schools. There's a hole there.
There's a gap. You know, the mineral industry really funded education for a long time, and in the last couple of years we've seen a significant decrease in those funds, and we look at about a $300 million plus or minus funding gap on education. One of the opportunities with your treasury is to be able to do a lot better with our return on investment. Our CIO last year told our Appropriations Committee that if we can just go from the bottom quartile where we have been and are today up to the median level, just halfway average, that could mean up to $1 billion of new money every 3 years. Folks, when you break that down, there is the answer for education. It also, there's enough there to talk about how we're going to take care of our seniors, and that's a constant battle. So when we think about how do we do better and what does this really mean when I talk about raising income return,
right,
it comes to addressing, and the real blessing is we can fix the education funding deficit, that crisis in education. We can take care of our seniors, and it isn't going to require tax raises.
632-6500 is the phone number if you have a question for Leland. This is Glenn. Who's on the phone with me?
Hey, it's Dave again.
Yes, sir.
Hey, I was got a question. Does this guy do you do the investments for Wyoming?
Dave, that's a great question, and your treasurer is not your chief investment officer. There's two different things going on. When we get into the investment side of it, the treasurer's responsibility and opportunity here is really to assemble the very best team, the smartest and best professionals that are experts in that side of it. The treasurer's role is much more about managing, assembling a top team, and then making sure we're getting the best results.
You pick that team.
Yes,
is that correct?
It's what we have right now is a pretty solid team in the treasurer's office with a whole lot of talent, and the key going forward is to both keep that team together, producing, supported, and accountable.
And maybe add some new people. What my question was is what your investment ideas might be. Where would you put Wyoming's money if your investment group? I mean, what suggestions are there to invest the money for Wyoming?
Okay, I'll let you go and I'll let him answer the question.
Well, the key here, I think, is to change our asset allocation. Right now, we're running around 55% to the stock side, and the bonds are making up the rest of it. And as you're aware, the bonds are very low performing. They're stable, but we miss a lot of opportunities here. With Amendment A, it allows us to go up to 70%, and that's how you start to capitalize and take advantage of those market increases with the index-type funds. That's where we're going to make that difference, and that's where our current treasurer, when he talked to me about this last fall, said, there's our opportunity. That's where former Treasurer Lummis agreed the same thing. And then as we've done work in the industry and with experts across the state and some national experts, they looked at Wyoming's portfolio and said, we can do better, and this is the time to put our money to work.
I thought Governor Meade actually asked a very good question here when it comes to the rainy day fund. What I disagreed with was he always wanted to get into it. But what I agreed with was the question, what exactly constitutes a rainy day? When do you dip into that fund?
Well, let me give you an answer, a little bit of history on that. For the last 4 years, we have been using that rainy day fund, that reserve account. The challenging part is in the last 4 years, every year we take a larger portion of it. Now, over the course of the 2-year biennium, the 2-year budget, some of that money comes back and is refilled. This year we started our budget session anticipating we were going to use $370 million out of the reserve account. By the time we got done, we took a little bigger bite of that.
Right.
And then over the next 2 years, if things come in as anticipated, we'll rebuild about estimated 2/3 of that. But every year we take a larger piece, and as a result, in about 4 years, we've gone from a $2 billion reserve account down, depending on where you are in the cycle and the refill, closer to $1 to $1.4 billion. And so we're using that rainy day fund. And so when we think about when is it raining, I'll tell you, for the last 4 years, we've been relying on that budget reserve to balance our account, which we have to do by Constitution.
Now, in the past year or two anyway, especially some numbers that came out for the state of Wyoming today, our economy is doing much better. Things are picking back up. We still have some to recover from, but things are picking back up. Can you look in your crystal ball here and see within the next couple of years, how do you think we're going to be doing? Are you still going to be dipping into that fund, or are we going to be adding into the fund?
Well, today we're planning and budgeting to continue to dip into it. I think our opportunity with an increased return is to stop having to use that reserve account, that rainy day fund as it's known, but also with a bigger vision and with working between the legislature and the 5 with the State Land and Investment Board, is we need to continue to build our treasury and thus insulate us from these swings of a mineral economy.
Okay. Now, then when we start to add back into the rainy day fund, at some point when it starts to build up, the question then becomes, every candidate running for governor, for example, wants to diversify the economy, however they plan to do that. Does that also involve diversifying our tax structure? I know that's not exactly the job of the treasurer, but how would you see diversifying our tax structure, if at all?
Well, I'll tell you, I'm not a fan at this point of diversifying our tax structure because I don't believe we're at that point. I think by using our treasury, playing to our strengths, and that's Wyoming's small population and huge sovereign wealth fund, in the correct term, we don't need to get into this, how do we raise taxes, how do we diversify taxes conversation. Let's focus on getting a better return on our investments, and as the forecasted mineral swing, notably the oil play up in the Bighorn, or up in the Converse County country, comes in, let's be a little more careful and not spend everything that comes in, but instead build our treasury, build our reserves, and then the next time this mineral economy that largely pays our bills takes a dip, we're able to insulate ourselves from those dips and not get into the danger that we face and we have faced for the last couple of years of, folks, is it time to raise taxes? I'm just not a fan of that.
Leland Christensen has been my guest for this half hour. They can find you online where?
LelandForWyoming.com website, same with Facebook, social media, and come out.